At 8:00 p.m. on a Thursday evening, a terse press release was sent from Oprah Winfrey's office. Its title contained just 7 words: "We are not moving forward with this," but its impact reverberated, like a thunderclap, across an already stormy media landscape. For Meghan Markle, there were no hashtags flooding Twitter this time, no sympathetic columns, no A-listers reposting quotes in solidarity, just brutal headlines from the Daily Mail, New York Post, and TMZ. Oprah shuts down Meghan, the final break. Just 2 years ago, Meghan Markle sat across from Oprah and ignited a global media explosion. That 85-minute interview wasn't just a PR win, it was an act of narrative war. Meghan didn't just tell her story, she took back the story. And Oprah, she wasn't merely a facilitator, she was the gatekeeper, granting Meghan access to the global empathy pipeline. Now, after 2 bruising years of PR missteps, from the abrupt end of her Spotify deal to a lackluster Netflix reception and a growing sense of public fatigue, Meghan sought one thing: a reset, a chance to reclaim the mic, a second conversation with Oprah, this time to reframe, clarify, and perhaps rewrite the public memory of the last 2 years. But Oprah said no. Sources close to Harpo Productions confirmed that Meghan's team reached out in early July with a proposal for a new, honest, and future-focused conversation. According to leaked details, it would highlight Meghan's humanitarian pivot, her lessons learned, and her evolving role as a media figure in post-royal life. But Oprah's response was decisive: "We're not pursuing this at this time." Outwardly, it seemed like scheduling. Inwardly, insiders suggest it was far more strategic. This wasn't about timing, a CBS source noted. It was about brand protection. Oprah's image absorbed too much heat last time, she wasn't going to burn herself again. In the tight-knit world of American media elites, such a rejection carries weight far beyond the actual interview. This wasn't just a declined opportunity, it was a signal. If even Oprah, once Meghan's most powerful media ally, refuses to associate with her again, what does that say? Commentators quickly took note. Meghan's newness factor has worn off, one Hollywood publicist told Variety. Without Oprah, she has no runway. No one else can offer that kind of global re-entry. The 2021 interview had been Meghan's media triumph, but it also triggered a storm of fact-checking and backlash. Outlets like the BBC and Politico raised questions about accuracy, context, and intent. Critics accused the segment of blurring victimhood with calculation, and as the months rolled on, even some initial supporters began to retreat. And so when news broke that Oprah had passed on Meghan's latest proposal, public opinion didn't mourn a missed opportunity, it saw poetic closure. Meghan, once the queen of narrative control, now faced the prospect of being shut out from the very media machine she once mastered. But what truly turned whispers into shockwaves wasn't just the no, it was what came next. A single sentence in an internal email between Meghan's communications advisor and a producer on Oprah's team has now surfaced, and it reveals something much deeper than a scheduling conflict. That one sentence, flagged in red, may be the first hard proof that Oprah wasn't simply declining. She was severing ties altogether. The email in question was brief, just 4 lines, but one phrase was highlighted in bold. Flagged by an internal producer: "I am not willing to risk the integrity of my brand for this." The message, sent from an assistant at Harpo to Meghan's PR liaison, wasn't meant to be public, but its leak, now confirmed by a journalist from The Hollywood Reporter, turned what had been a quiet rejection into a public unraveling. That phrase, "risk the integrity of my brand," rippled across media circles like a quiet detonation. It suggested bluntly and unmistakably that Oprah Winfrey no longer saw Meghan Markle as a safe narrative partner. It wasn't a question of availability, relevance, or even public fatigue. It was about reputational risk, and Oprah, one of the most calculating image architects in television history, had decided Meghan was no longer worth it. In a town like Hollywood, that kind of reputational calculus spreads fast. Within 48 hours, 2 upcoming talk show appearances with Meghan, one with Ellen, another with CBS Mornings, were quietly postponed. A source close to CBS Mornings told Deadline that there were concerns about optics and alignment. And while no official reason was given, the pattern was unmistakable. The media industry, once eager to spotlight Meghan as a feminist disruptor, was now backing away cautiously, quietly, but decisively. But what pushed Oprah over the edge, what made the media's most powerful storyteller back out of a second sit-down with the very woman she helped amplify? According to insiders at OWN and CBS, the real concern wasn't Meghan's story, it was the fallout from the first interview. In the aftermath of the 2021 broadcast, Oprah's team endured months of backlash. Major claims made by Meghan, including the infamous allegation of a royal family member questioning Archie's skin tone, were later disputed, fact-checked, or reframed. British media mounted an aggressive counter-narrative, and while Oprah stood by the interview, publicly, sources say she privately acknowledged it crossed a line between journalism and performance. One producer who worked on the special revealed that Oprah was blindsided by some of the media response. She thought the truth would be self-evident, but it wasn't. For a woman whose empire is built on trust, spiritual resonance, and emotional clarity, the backlash felt like a betrayal of her brand's core values. So when Meghan's team returned this year pitching another tell-all, Oprah reportedly asked a simple but devastating question: what's new? And therein lay the deeper problem: there wasn't much. The proposed conversation offered no new revelations, no pivot, no compelling arc of transformation. Instead, it was framed as a chance to clarify the record, a media euphemism often reserved for rehashing old wounds. One executive summed it up bluntly: audiences have already heard Meghan's story. The novelty is gone. The danger of repetition outweighs the benefit of clarity. And with that, Oprah stepped back and the dominoes began to fall. A source at Archwell confirmed that several nonprofits Meghan had planned to collaborate with have since paused discussions, citing concerns about media volatility. Another insider hinted that even Spotify's quiet exit last year was less about performance metrics and more about strategic distancing. What we're witnessing now, analysts say, is the beginning of a reputational plateau, or perhaps a descent. The Meghan Markle brand, once powered by the momentum of fresh defiance and royal rupture, now finds itself stuck in a loop, retelling the same origin myth to an audience that's beginning to move on. But then, just as the narrative seemed to settle, a new piece of evidence emerged. And then a confidential production outline surfaced, revealing Meghan's plan wasn't just to tell her story, but to weaponize the interview against her former allies, including Oprah herself. The confidential production outline, leaked late Tuesday night to a mid-level producer at a streaming platform, confirmed what many had only suspected: Meghan's so-called clarification interview had been designed not as a healing arc, but as a counteroffensive. The outline, stamped with the logo of a boutique media agency often used by Archwell Productions, contained proposed segments titled "Correcting the Record," "Toxic Feminism," "In the Media," and most notably, "When Allies Turn Silent." That last title, buried deep in the second half of the treatment, raised immediate alarms. Underneath, bullet points referenced Oprah by name, not to celebrate her support in 2021, but to question her role since. One of the talking points read, "Why do powerful women uplift each other only when it's convenient?" Suddenly, everything changed. The idea that Meghan had merely sought a safe space to explain herself fell apart. What emerged instead was a blueprint for narrative revenge, a strategic attempt to reclaim public sympathy by subtly targeting the very woman who once gave her a global platform. And that, according to media insiders, is when doors truly began to close. Executives at multiple networks reportedly convened crisis calls once the document leaked. One unnamed insider at a major streaming company stated, "We weren't just dealing with a reputational liability, this was starting to look like a media scorched earth campaign." Meghan, once seen as the sympathetic disruptor, was now being cast as something more volatile, someone willing to risk burning bridges for the sake of reframing her story. And it wasn't just Oprah under fire. The outline included subtle references to other high-profile names once associated with Meghan, Gayle King, Ellen DeGeneres, even Trevor Noah, hinting that silence in the face of Meghan's public challenges was complicity. That single document, never meant to surface, became the tipping point. If the email in Canvas 2 sparked discomfort, the outline detonated distrust. PR strategists who once hailed Meghan as a master of narrative agility began distancing themselves. One even told Variety, "The playbook worked in 2021, but running the same route in 2025 with fewer allies and no novelty is reckless." The public reaction was immediate and polarizing. Hashtags like #MeghanMediaWar began trending, while forums and comment sections lit up with debates. Was this a calculated attempt to weaponize victimhood, or a desperate move by a woman losing her last major stage? And perhaps most chillingly, some began asking whether Oprah had sensed all of this in advance and had stepped away just in time. But amidst the outcry and finger-pointing, another layer emerged, one that made the entire strategy seem even riskier. According to an anonymous source from inside Archwell's PR circle, Meghan had personally reviewed and approved the draft. Not only that, she had added handwritten notes, which included a chilling marginal comment next to Oprah's name: "If she won't protect the truth, we must show what silence enables." It was no longer about reclaiming a narrative, it was about redefining allies and enemies in the public arena. But even this wasn't the final blow, because just as media began parsing the outline and dissecting Meghan's intentions, another revelation surfaced, this time from within the entertainment industry itself. A senior executive at Netflix quietly confirmed that Meghan had tried to leverage her production deal as pressure, offering exclusivity in exchange for helping resurrect the Oprah moment. And what happened next may be the most reputationally damaging twist of all. As the media whirlwind intensified and Meghan's production outline continued to circulate in industry back channels, an even more damaging revelation slipped into the public sphere, one that struck not just at Meghan's intentions, but at the strategic core of her media dealings. A senior executive at Netflix, speaking on condition of anonymity, confirmed that Meghan's team had quietly approached the platform several months ago with a pitch that at first glance seemed innocuous, a new docuseries on reputation recovery and narrative agency. But buried in the fine print and later flagged in internal emails was a critical clause: Netflix would receive exclusive broadcast rights to any future sit-down between Meghan and Oprah. At first, this seemed like a bold strategic alignment, but the implications became clear almost instantly. Meghan wasn't just shopping a show. She was using her Netflix deal as leverage, offering access to a potentially explosive second Oprah interview in exchange for corporate backing and protection. In essence, she was trying to package Oprah as content, a move that shocked even the most jaded executives in the room. "We were stunned," the Netflix exec admitted. "It wasn't just unorthodox, it was manipulative. Oprah isn't a production asset, she's a global institution. Treating her like a PR instrument was a dangerous misread of how power in this town works." Word traveled quickly. By the end of that week, Netflix had declined the pitch. Internal memos circulated stating that no narrative asset should override platform neutrality or compromise brand integrity. The rejection wasn't public, but it was absolute. And once Netflix pulled out, others followed suit. According to insiders' representatives from multiple organizations, including 2 prominent NGOs and a women's leadership conference Meghan had planned to keynote, also backed away. One organizer put it plainly: "No, we don't want to be caught in a crossfire between billion-dollar brands and personal vendettas." This wasn't just a reputational downturn, it was a full-blown domino collapse. A cascade of cancellations, silences, and side-eyes now surrounded Meghan's public presence. Events were rescheduled, sponsorships reevaluated, and media invitations revoked. The narrative had shifted once more, but this time Meghan wasn't controlling it. She was trapped in it. And for the first time, observers noted, Meghan seemed isolated not just from the royal family or the British press, but from Hollywood itself. The power centers that once welcomed her with open arms now viewed her as unpredictable, perhaps even radioactive. What was once seen as strategic boldness now looked like recklessness. What was framed as authenticity was being reinterpreted as tactical aggression. Even those who had once championed her, progressive journalists, feminist authors, liberal podcast hosts, began to hedge their statements, urging grace and accountability rather than open support. Meghan's name was no longer synonymous with disruption or empowerment. It was tethered to terms like overreach, burned bridges, and brand fatigue. Still, one question remained unanswered: why push so far so fast and with such apparent disregard for long-term relationships? A former advisor who worked with Meghan during the early Archewell days offered a chilling insight. She thought this was her final window. The brand was fading, the impact diminishing. And in this town, if you don't control the story, someone else will. But even as doors continued to close, one more was rumored to be opening. A quiet, calculated move, a last resort effort to pivot narratives once again, was reportedly already in motion. Because while Meghan may have lost her biggest ally, sources suggest she's preparing one final play, one that could either redeem her legacy or bury it for good. In the days following the Netflix fallout, a distinct quiet settled around Meghan Markle. Not the silence of retreat, but the eerie pause of recalibration. Public appearances were suspended, press releases went dark, and Archewell's once busy social media channels posted nothing but a single black and white image, Meghan alone in silhouette, seated at a desk, pen in hand. To the untrained eye, it appeared reflective, perhaps even poetic. But to those familiar with media patterning, it read as something else: preparation. According to multiple sources close to Archewell's communications team, Meghan is now plotting a final pivot, not a tell-all, not a documentary, not even a streaming exclusive, but something more guerrilla in nature. The term circulating internally is direct narrative control, a move that would allow her to bypass legacy media altogether and re-engage her audience from a lower platform with fewer filters and fewer safety nets. This means stepping away from the Oprah-sized stages, the Hollywood gloss, and the corporate protection she once courted. It means facing harder questions on less forgiving platforms without the comfort of choreographed edits and guaranteed applause. And it may be her only option left. One former Netflix executive, now observing from a distance, put it starkly: she's fallen from global primetime to the digital backroom, YouTube channels, controlled podcasts, maybe independent platforms. There's no shame in it, but the power dynamic has shifted. The danger now isn't just reputational, it's narrative disintegration. Because in the absence of a clear platform and strong institutional allies, Meghan risks losing the most valuable asset she ever held: the ability to define her own story. Already, media outlets are filling the vacuum. Tabloids are reframing her as a cautionary tale. Influencers are mining her downfall for content, and even her once loyal online base is fracturing, debating not whether she's been mistreated, but whether she miscalculated. And yet there's still a path forward. Observers point out that in the age of fragmented media, redemption doesn't come from institutions. It comes from resonance. If Meghan can craft a new authentic narrative, one that owns past mistakes without weaponizing them, she might still reclaim part of the audience that once followed her so fiercely. But that path is narrow, and time is not her ally. A former speechwriter from Archwell, now working in independent advocacy, framed it this way: Meghan needs to stop telling the world who hurt her and start showing the world who she is beyond the pain. Whether she will take that advice remains unclear. What is clear, however, is this: the next move must come from her alone, and it will define not just how the world sees Meghan, but whether they continue to look at all. Is Meghan the victim of a media system that exploits and discards women once they lose novelty? Or has she overplayed her hand, sacrificing credibility for control? Are we witnessing the fall of a manipulated figure or the exposure of a manipulator herself?